everyone, thanks for coming in again. This is Mrs. Kirk. I'm going to go over with you the fourth day of our notes on geometric sequences. Until now we've done everything with arithmetic, but here we go into something called geometric sequences. So I've got the notes started up here, and again, pause the video if you would like, so you can get everything caught up. But I'm going to go ahead and start filling in my notes. I also have handy with me my my note card. I asked you guys to fill out a note card, an index card with the formulas. These are the two formulas that I have on my index card so far, the explicit and recursive formulas from the past few days of notes. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to start filling in what I know here. So as a review, on the very top of my notes, I wrote down that arithmetic sequences blank to get the next term. What do they do in arithmetic? Well, they add to get to the next term. The explicit formula, at this point, hopefully you have that formula memorized. It was a sub n is equal to a sub 1 plus d times n minus 1. An example of an arithmetic sequence would be something like this: 3, 7, 11, 15, ... Take a moment and see if you can come up with the explicit formula. So this is a little review of what you learned yesterday. What is the explicit formula for this sequence? Well, the first thing I need to do is figure out what the common difference is. Looks like I'm adding 4. I'm adding 4 and I'm adding 4. So D is 4. On the side of my paper, I'm going to write the formula down for the explicit formula. A sub n is equal to a sub 1 plus d times n minus 1. Then I'm going to work it out. I've got a sub n is equal to a sub 1 is the number 3. That's the first term. D is the number 4. And n minus 1. You want to go ahead and distribute that 4 and combine like terms. So I've got a sub n is equal to 3 plus 4n minus 4. To finish this off, I ran out of space, so I'm just going to do a double arrow here. You get the formula a sub n is equal to 4n minus 1. So that was a quick little review of what we learned yesterday in our notes on how to find the explicit formula. So again, this is called the explicit formula. And then yesterday in the notes, on the very bottom of the notes, we had something called the recursive formula. I'm going to go ahead and just give you an example of what a recursive formula would look like for this previous problem up here. So if you remember the recursive formula from yesterday, it's going to be a sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1. I'm going to use my handy cheat sheet here. Let's see. The recursive formula, a sub n minus 1 plus d. Plus d. Well, in this question, I said d was the number 4. So I'm putting a plus 4 at the end. And then also with the recursive formula, here's my little cheat sheet. You need to write down what a sub 1 is. Well, in this particular problem, what is a sub 1? A sub 1 is the first term, and the first term is the number 3. So this was a review from what we did yesterday in the notes on how to come up with an explicit formula and how to come up with a recursive formula. And that's all about arithmetic. Now let's go ahead and move on to geometric. I'm going to slide the notes, and if you need to pause the video, please do so to get yourselves caught up. So here's the new material. I'm going to start filling in the notes, so hopefully you paused it and you got a chance to write everything down. Geometric sequences blank to get the next term. Well, for geometric, they're going to multiply. And the explicit formula for a geometric sequence is a sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r raised to the n minus 1 power. So again, this is the first time I'm learning this. I'm going to write down what this stuff means. A sub n stands for the nth term. A sub 1 stands for the first term. R stands for the common ratio. And n is the term I'm looking for. And let's see, a common ratio is the number I'm multiplying by. So maybe as a caveat here, R is the number you multiply by. Okay, so I'm going to box in this formula, and on my note card, after my notes, I'm going to add that formula down so that I have that to refer back to. So here's my first example here. I'm going to slide this up. My first example says find the fifth term of the sequence. So this is supposed to be a geometric sequence. So I'm going to think about what am I multiplying by this time to get from 3 to 6 and from 6 to 12. Let's see, from 3 to 6, it looks like I'm going to multiply, so I'll put times, multiplying by 2. From 6 to 12, I'm also multiplying by 2. Now, if you didn't really see that, the way to actually figure this out algebraically, to figure out the common ratio, in this case, the common ratio was 2, but if you couldn't really see that, what you could do is you could take the second term and you could divide that by the first term. Let's check that out. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Or I could have done 12 divided by 6. It's also 2. So if you can't find the pattern, try using this strategy. Okay, it does say find the fifth term. So if you want to just go ahead and follow that pattern of multiplying by 2, I think we could find the fifth term easily. What's the fourth term going to be? Well, 12 doubled is 24. What's 24 doubled? 48. So I know the fifth term is going to be 48, but what if it said find the 100th term? I don't want to list them all. These numbers would get really large. So I want to practice that formula and see if we get the same answer. I'm going to write the formula down. A sub n is equal to a sub 1, r raised to the n minus 1. I know the answer is 48, but I want to see that this formula works. So I'm going to write down a sub 5 is equal to, in this case, a sub 1 is the number 3, r we figured out was the number 2, n is the number 5 because we're looking for the fifth term. And this is where you need to grab your graphing calculators and see that you can definitely type this properly. The parentheses are very important. So parentheses 3, parentheses 2. I'm using this caret button right here, caret. And I'm just going to do the 5 minus 1 in my head. I know 5 minus 1 is the number 4. And that, sure enough, does give me 48, which is what we figured out over here, just using it, doing it in our heads. Okay, here's my question number 2. Find the 9th term of the sequence 243, 81, 27, dot, dot, dot. Okay, so let's see here. Actually, before I do that, I want to make a note here on this last question. At this point, this is where I just type on the calculator. Okay, so find the 9th term of this. Boy, oh boy, this is pretty challenging to figure out what R is. R is what you're multiplying by to get from the first term to the second term. Can you figure out what's happening? Maybe from the second term to the third term is a little bit easier. Can you see what's happening? I'm having a hard time seeing what's happening, so I'm going to go back and use that strategy from above. I'm going to take my second term. I'm going to divide that by my first term. So in this question, I'm going to take the number 81. I'm going to divide that by 243. So I'm going to grab my calculator and see what that is. 81 divided by 243. Ooh, it's some decimal. Well, this is great practice. How do I change a decimal to a fraction? Math. And we're going to pick choice 1 where it says fraction. See, it's going to take my answer and change it to a fraction. Push enter. So the common ratio is the fraction 1/3. Now again, you may have figured that out on your own, but I wanted to show you how you could use your calculators to figure that ratio out in case the numbers do get to be more challenging in the future. So now I'm going to write my formula down. A sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r raised to the n minus 1. So we need the 9th term. So this is a sub 9 is equal to a sub 1. What is a sub 1 in this problem? 243. Parentheses r, we figured out r was the fraction 1/3. Close the parentheses, raised to the 9 minus 1. So at this point, this is where you need to type this on the calculator. And please, I really encourage you to grab your calculators and make sure that you are able to get the same answer that I will be giving you. So I have my calculator here. I'm going to type in parentheses 243, close my parentheses. Doing another parentheses, and I'll do that fraction of 1/3. So I'm using my alpha y equals key to get the fraction notation. Now, if you don't have this kind of calculator, we've been practicing throughout the school year that you could just do parentheses 1 divided by 3. Now I need to get an exponent. Again, that exponent key is this caret key right underneath clear. So I'll push exponent. And I can do 9 minus 1 in my head. 9 minus 1 is the number 8. So again, please grab your calculators and make sure that you get the same output that I'm going to get. I get the output of 1/27. Now, depending on what model calculator you have, your calculator might have given you a decimal. I'm not going to freak out if I see a decimal. If I see a decimal, I'm just going to push math fraction to change it to a fraction. So I'm going to write that down as a note to myself. You push math and choice 1 to change a decimal into a fraction. So practice that step on your own to make sure that you know how to get fractions on your calculator. Okay, here's one last question for the notes today. This is my question number 3. The question is to find the first term if r is equal to -4 and a sub 8 is equal to 32,768. Yikes. This is where the formula is very important. Find the first term. And I gave you some information. Oh boy. Well, I guess I'm going to start by writing the formula down, because when I get overwhelmed, I just write down something that I know. So I know the formula is a sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r raised to the n minus 1. Okay, well, now I can use the information that they gave me and plug in what I know. Do I know what a sub n is? Well, right here they're telling me a sub 8. That's some information there. I'm going to plug in a sub 8 is equal to, I don't know what the first term is. They're asking me to find the first term. Remember, first term means a sub 1. They told me r is the number -4. Now here's the tricky problem. What do you suppose n is in this problem? It doesn't tell it to me. It doesn't say n is this. But I can be a detective. I can look at the clues that they gave me to figure out what n is. Can you figure out what n is? You got it. N is this number here, a sub 8. N is the number 8. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this one step further. A sub 8 is a number. They told me a sub 8 was this number, 32,768. And I'm going to use my calculator now to figure out what this is equal to. So I'm going to clear out my screen and type in parentheses -4 raised to, what power am I going to raise this to? You got it, the 7th power. And the parentheses is very important. If you don't have parentheses around the -4, your final answer might be wrong. I got -16,384. Yikes, that's a big number. -16,384. Well, the question says to find the first term, so I only have one step left. How do I get a sub 1 by itself? So at this point, if I'm going to write down what I'm doing here, the first thing I did was I plugged in the numbers. Again, these are my notes, so I'm just annotating what I'm doing. The next thing that I did was I used the calculator on -4 to the 7th power. And the last thing I'm going to do is to solve for a sub 1. So if you guessed that I'm going to divide both sides by -16,384, then you guessed right. I definitely don't know what that divides out to be, so I will definitely need my calculator for this. 32,768 divided by -16,384. So grab your calculators and see if you get the same output. -2. Wait a second. I just figured out a sub 1 is -2. I thought yesterday I said something about you can't have negative numbers. Oh, now I remember. You can't have negative numbers if you're finding n. Could a sub 1 be negative? It sure could, because a sub 1, this is just telling me that the first term is -2. And that's okay to have a negative for a first term in a sequence. Thank you everybody for following along. Again, this is Mrs. Kirk. I really appreciate all of your hard work. I'm going to grab my note card when I turn off this video. I'm going to grab my note card and fill in my new formula here. This was the formula for today. I'm going to copy that formula down. The homework today is another worksheet. I know that you guys do prefer worksheets during the school year. This is going to be tricky. If you don't have a printer, just on a separate sheet of paper, write down the work and the answers yourselves. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Mrs. Kirk. Until next time, take care and stay safe.